New Frontiers, the Race for the Galaxy board game. What's the gameplay like? And how does it compare to Race for the Galaxy and Roll for the Galaxy? Welcome to Tantrum House Studio D. I'm Melissa Delp.
And I'm Kevin Delp. New Frontiers is a 2 to 5 player action selection game that plays in about 60 to 75 minutes. It's all about expanding your galactic empire.
It's published by Grande Games, and they sent us this copy to review.
Let's look at the components.
There are player empire mats and other mats, development boards and tiles, worlds, tiles, colonists, resources, tokens, and a bag.
If you're familiar at all with Race for the Galaxy or Roll for the Galaxy, then a lot of stuff in this game is going to be familiar to you. In this video, we're going to talk about the main elements of this new game, and then we're going to make some comparisons. The specific game setup is determined by player count. There's a handy reference guide that gives the reminders. On the development boards, certain tiles are always used. But for these small developments and the large developments, you can use either side. The stack just has to be the same throughout. Players receive a random empire mat and can choose which side to play with. When you lay out the action tiles, decide if you're going to play with the goal tiles.
At the start of each round, the first player on the order track chooses an action tile. That player performs the action first and gets a bonus. Then for most of the tiles, the other players in turn order get to take that basic action. When the next player takes their turn, they have to choose a tile that hasn't been activated yet. Once all players have taken a turn choosing an action tile, the round ends and the tiles reset.
If you choose to develop, you can buy one of the development tiles. Your bonus is that it costs 1 fewer credit. Then everyone else can buy a development.
When you choose the explore action, you draw 7 worlds from the bag and choose one to add to your empire face down. Then the other players get to pick one. Your bonus is getting to pick a second world after everyone has chosen theirs.
Once you have some worlds, it's a good idea to settle. For your bonus, you get a colonist, and then you can choose to take 2 more colonists or to actually settle a world. You'll flip it over to the active side, add the required colonists, and either pay the cost in credits or show that you have the required military strength.
The produce action lets you place goods on settled production worlds. The bonus ability lets you add a good to one windfall world. Each world can hold only 1 good at a time.
To move goods off your worlds, you need the trade and consume action. The player who chooses it gets 1 victory point. Then everyone can trade 1 good for the listed value. Players who have remaining goods and consume powers have to turn in their goods, usually for victory points, credits, or both.
If you choose send diplomatic envoys, you get a victory point and move to first in the turn order. No one else gets anything.
If you retreat into isolation, you get 2 credits, and no one else gets anything. If you're playing with goals, you use the other side of the tile, which gives you a goal.
You keep playing round after round until the end of the game is triggered. There are 4 ways to trigger the end of the game.
A player's developments cover more than 10 spaces. The red sections are a reminder. A player has settled more than 7 colonies. The red lines are a reminder. Or the number of colonists in the supply is fewer than 5. Or the pool of victory points is emptied.
You'll finish out the final round and count up your victory points from victory point chips, the point value of settled colonies and developments, any bonuses from 9 cost developments, and then any points from goals if you played with them.
Whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. Now we played this at different player counts. We played this at 2 players and you get 2 actions each. So it plays pretty fast. It even plays pretty fast at 3 players. But once you get into the 4 or 5 player games, it could take a little bit longer. Specifically, they're trying to choose what actions they're going to take, and maybe even during the draft, what world they're taking or development.
But there's still not that much downtime, because even when it's not your turn, the actions that the other players select usually are going to trigger for you as well. Weight-wise, I would categorize this game as medium complexity. The actions aren't too difficult to understand and to follow through with, but there are a lot of icons and specific powers on the worlds and developments.
Now, with the start worlds and different configurations of developments during setup, it adds to the variability and replayability to the game. And I think even there's a lot of player interaction with what actions players are going to choose in a given round.
If you play with the goals, there's more variability. You get to look at 3 and pick 1. The interesting thing, though, is that the goals will apply to everyone, not just yourself. So you want to try to pick ones that benefit your strategy more. Some of the goals require you to stash stuff on them, so you have to choose whether you want to have those goods or credits available or if you want to save them for endgame scoring.
There's definitely a learning curve to this game. Knowing how the different worlds and development synergize is going to be a big advantage for you. Melissa did pretty good the first time we played.
If you've already played Race or Roll for the Galaxy, you're going to have a huge leg up on the competition because there are a lot of similarities in the games. You'll notice some familiar art, worlds, and powers, especially compared with the original Race for the Galaxy. New Frontiers does add more text, though, to try to explain the iconography.
Now, there are two main differences to New Frontiers, and they're sort of similar to Puerto Rico. Now, in Race and Roll for the Galaxy, there's that simultaneous action selection, and you're trying to think about what other people are trying to do and capitalize on that, and they're resolved in a certain order. But in New Frontiers, those actions are all laid out, so they could be resolved in pretty much any order, but there's a follow mechanic like Puerto Rico has.
Yeah, the other thing in the game that is similar to Puerto Rico is that the developments are already laid out at the beginning. They're kind of like the buildings you can choose from in Puerto Rico, but there's a limited number of them and not enough for each player, so there's a little bit of competition for those really desirable developments.
Yeah.
And then there's also the worlds, though. Those are drawn randomly, so that's a little more similar.
Yeah, but with those worlds, you have the draft, so you can pick and choose which ones you want, which would hopefully help your empire the best. And also, I think there's a lot more just open information in this game because you can see what worlds other people are working on and even developments compared to the more hidden information of Race and Roll for the Galaxy.
Right, so I might decide to develop when I know Kevin doesn't have any money, so he can't benefit from that action.
There are a lot of components that come with this game, and that may be helpful for some people as they grapple with the gameplay. It's more tactile and less abstract than using cards or dice for everything. But that means the box is bigger, and there was a lot of punchboard to go through too.
Of the 3 games in the Race for the Galaxy universe, I would say that Race is the most streamlined. But it's actually probably the hardest one to teach because of all the iconography, and the use of the cards is a little bit abstract because you're using them for everything. Now, Roll is a little easier to teach, but there are a few aspects, especially with using the dice to select your actions and then the different ways you can manipulate them, that can be a little hard for people to wrap their mind around at first.
Yeah, I totally agree. Race just had those cards pretty much, and then Roll added the dice.
New Frontiers could look a bit intimidating, and it does take a while to set up and tear down, but the components give a concrete visual aspect to the actions that you're taking. And then the extra text really helps explain the iconography. If I were going to introduce someone to this universe of games, I think I would start with New Frontiers or with Roll for the Galaxy.
It is fun to check all that dice and Roll for the Galaxy. Now, one caveat I would say is, especially if you're familiar with Race for the Galaxy, is it's difficult sometimes to remember to do all the things with the components in the game, especially like putting the colonists on the worlds and taking and spending the credits.
Right, we did have to remind a few players when we were playing to keep up with all of that manual bookkeeping.
I like the goods that are new to this game. They have different colors and they're smaller and bigger. This is helpful because green and yellow get more credits when you trade, whereas blue and brown don't give you as much. I also like the double-sided empire mats, and even the worlds are double-sided to help you remember if it's been colonized yet or not.
I'm a big fan of the Race for the Galaxy series that Rio Grande started years ago. I actually put race and roll together in my top 10. And I also have Puerto Rico in my top 10. So this hybrid game that combines the mechanisms from both of those is really intriguing to me. It brings some different strategies and play style to the for the Galaxy universe. If you are familiar with Puerto Rico and you don't like the action selection mechanism in that, then you may want to skip this game.
I think Roll for the Galaxy is still my favorite.
I just can't choose.
She can't choose.
No.
Well, if you've never entered the world of the Race for the Galaxy series, then we would recommend you checking out New Frontiers. Or if you're already a fan of the Race for the Galaxy series, then definitely check out New Frontiers, the Race for the Galaxy board game from Rio Grande Games. And we'd love for you to subscribe to Tantrum House.